So for this dress, as you can see, one shoulder, well, both shoulders are too low. And of course, this could be an off the shoulder dress, but the wearer does not want it to be an off the shoulder dress. So in order to fix that problem, we're going to have to look at the back seam. So I don't like to make the alteration from this front seam. I'd rather do it from the back and really pulling that in. And what it's going to do is you have to alter the angle of the seam right here. And so removing the stitches and then pulling it down into the seam. And also, I just wanted to note this is a maternity dress as well. So I've already actually done one side of the alteration. So you can see here is the back, and this is how I'm taking in the sleeve so that it's not falling off the shoulder. So I haven't trimmed off my edge yet. But basically what we're doing is you're taking this seam out, and you see there was just this little ruffle edge that's also stitched into the arm. Here I went ahead and already stitched it all back together. And so just really carefully, we're going to be taking that apart with a seam ripper. And there is a serged edge as well as a straight stitch here. Now that I've started, I'm just going to continue to go down this edge. I'm going to pick up this tool, which is my razor seam ripper. It just cuts a little faster away at the threads. And what you want to do is, so I know that I'm going to need about 2 inches taken over here. And I want it to be a fairly straight angle. So I'm going to take it down a little bit further because remember, if we were pulling it over that much, you don't want it to look like it's kind of jagged into the seam, but that it is going at an angle. So the more we take something in, usually the more of a seam we need to take out so that it'll look natural. So I have all of this threads, these threads, I should say, proper English there, that I need to take out. And then this would come about 2 inches over here. And as you notice, this elastic got detached as well in this seam ripping process because it was in that seam. So that's that part of the alteration. Now, what I didn't mention when I first started the video is that these sleeves also need to be taken up about 5 inches. They're 5 inches too long. So when you go to examine the edge of the sleeve, it feels a little intimidating because it's a lined sleeve and it's all this sheer fabric and there's elastic stitched in there. When you turn the sleeve inside out, what you see is that the 2 pieces are separate, and actually the under sleeve, the line or the fabric on the inside is shorter than the fabric on the outside, which means that at the end of the sleeve, it gives it kind of this poof look because what happens is it rolls it under and the elastic in it gives it a bit of a ruffle. So what I'm actually going to do is take out this seam here. Not a lot, just enough so that we can turn the sleeve inside out and access that elastic. So this is a seam on the underside of the arm, inside on the, you could call it an lining piece, although I'm not sure that I would call it lining because they're the same fabric, but it's on the inside panel, not on the outside panel. And of course, after the alteration is done, we are going to put this seam back together. So I'm going to give myself enough space. So I am going to make my opening about 4 inches long, and then I'll be able to get to the lining. So now that that's done, we can pull this inside out and see here is my seam. This is what I want to get to, and it is really stitched together. So there's like a casing made around the elastic. So very, very carefully, just pulling these stitches out. Once you have that initial stitch taken out, I also am going to remove the stitch that's holding the elastic in. And I will be stitching that back in after the alteration is done, or actually after the sleeve is stitched. So these stitches I'm finding a little bit easier to pluck out. And here we have it. Just about, except on this end. Just completely remove this elastic. Now comes the little bit trickier part, because you have to put them inside each other as much as you can, but you really can't fully do that because of you just have the whole sleeve twisted up. But here I have the raw edge, and so you're going to have it going in inside the arm. And there we have, we're going to try and line this up. Now I want to line up the seams of both the front and back sleeve, or both the lining and the outside. You want to go up, I'm going to measure about 4.5 inches. I'm going to put a pin straight through. And I tend to know that when I put a pin in, this is the place at which I am going to be stitching through. So I know that because I'm eyeballing it. You can also baste this if you feel more comfortable having a couple of basting stitches in. But all the way around, I am going to put pins in 4.5 inches from the sleeve. And so that is going to shorten the sleeve by approximately 4.5 inches. The other thing that we're going to run into is that the outer sleeve also is fuller than the inner sleeve, so they're not going to line up perfectly. And as we stitch, I'm going to allow for some gathers or some folds to occur, because remember, I'm putting elastic back in. So it's such thin fabric that with the elastic, it's going to give the gathered look anyway. So I don't need to be excessively worried about having a couple of folds in my seam. And in a minute, I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine and sew both of these alterations. I'm going to start on the more complex part first. So here is that sleeve. And I have my attachment piece taken off so that I can slip this over what I call the free arm so that I can get closer to the seam. But I'm having some trouble with that. I need to shove my sleeve in a little bit further. So there we go. And definitely when you sew this piece, it does kind of feel like it's tangled, but as long as you keep your pieces moving together as evenly as possible, you'll be fine. And remember that you can also take it apart if you really run into a problem. So I am doing a straight stitch, just a regular stitch length, trying to flatten this out as much as possible to keep my distance from the original seam out pretty even. But if I need to create my own little gathers here, that is perfectly fine. Take that pin out. And I'm going to be continually moving it around because I am going in a circle. And that all has to be kept in line. And now I'm about halfway around and I feel like I'm starting to get twisted. So I'm actually going to take it out and readjust my pins and see how this is going, because it is better to check all of that. So see, because we're going in a circle, it does start to really spin. And this is true almost any time that you're stitching in a circle. It is a good idea if you feel twisted to take it off, straighten it, and start from the other direction. And this is where my pin should be. So now that that's straightened out a bit, I can start here from this direction. You always want to make sure on the underside that nothing is creeping up from other parts of the sleeve, because you do have so much going on. You don't want to be running over another portion of the sleeve. So I've completed the circumference, and now I just want to take a look at how this looks before I trim off any of my edges. So here's my hole, turning it back, and this is from the inside. And again, because I have all of that fabric in there, it's not going to give me a clear picture, but it gives me a pretty good picture of how my sleeve is going to hang. And I'm pretty happy with that. So I can trim that out and then go ahead and insert the elastic. So in order to trim that out again, it's going to be, want to be super careful. We're turning it back inside out. But again, because I can't get it so that I have all access to the hole under the sleeve, and it's wrapped in this other lining piece, which is similar to like if you ever altered a suit jacket. So the way in which I do that is I'll just snip through a little bit here, and then I'll start following along near the seam, but I do just go very small slits at a time, using your fingers on the underside to make sure that the other parts of the sleeve are not anywhere close to where you're cutting. And so really the scissors are gliding around my fingers. And now I'm going to untangle some of that. Making sure there's no fabric folded across that seam that I might cut. Okay, and so I've successfully cut all of that, but in order to get it off, I actually have to open it up because I won't be able to just slide it off. There. And then I can go ahead and stitch on my elastic back together. So in order to stitch the elastic on, I'm going to put the needle point down, move these out of the way. I'm going to take a couple of stitches. What I know is I'm going to need to keep this taut, really pull that elastic. So just to the right of the seam that I created, and start stitching all the way around. And I want to continually make sure that everything's flat on the underside so that nothing is getting caught up in my seam while stretching my elastic at the same time. Should be coming around to the edge. Yep. So here is the beginning of my elastic. I'm going to be pulling this elastic in, and I'm in the final stretch. Now I can turn this back inside out. As I come over to the sleeve top where it meets ruching, I'm going to do that alteration now. And so I've pinned it about 2 inches where I wanted to take it in. And as I stitch, I just need to keep the elastic in line as well and stitch over that. So I'm going to start with some forward, backwards. And I'm going to be holding this in place. And here we go. I'm going to take my pin out. Okay. And then on the original piece, this was sewn in here. So then it was all stitched like that. And I'm going to do that as well. Now I am finished with this alteration. As you can see, it no longer is falling off the shoulders. And this is what the sleeves now look like, which is exactly the same as they looked before the alteration, except that now they're shorter. I'm just getting my steamer ready to crease out some of these wrinkles that maybe, I don't know if this dress was purchased online, but if it was and it was shipped, you can definitely tell these are some packing wrinkles. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Feel free to drop any questions in the comment section or anything else. Thank you for watching. You can shop tutorials and classes on my website, naomifeda.net. Be sure to like and subscribe. And as always, may God sow his love into your heart today.